Topic today is about the animosity of Satan to the son of Adam. Satan is a fierce wolf that works day and night to disrupt people that are migrating to Allah from reaching their destination. Allah described this enemy in verse 6 of Surah Fatir. Allah said, "Verily, Satan is an enemy to you, so treat him as an enemy. He only invites his adherents, so they will become companions of the blazing fire." Part of his animosity is to make the bad consequences of disbelief, which are vile acts and disobedience of Allah, to look good to humans, as Allah described in verse 168 and 169 of Surah Al-Baqarah. Allah said, "And do not follow the footsteps of Satan, for he is to you an avowed enemy. For he commands you with what is evil and shameful, and that you should say of Allah what of which you have no knowledge." The description includes three things. The first is evil, which includes all sins that are committed by actions or in the heart. The second is shameful acts that contains the gravest of sins like adultery and others. And the third is to say things about Allah without knowledge, which is the worst of evil and the greatest of sins, because it is lying about Allah and attributing to Allah improper attributes. The verses describe how Satan works. So he calls to commit minor sins and major sins, and to say things about Allah without knowledge. We also witness that many people fall into his traps and follow him, especially in speaking without knowledge. So how many so-called scholars that consider themselves knowledgeable, but in reality they don't know much about Quran and Sunnah, yet they give their own opinion. Dear brothers and sisters, the ones that study the verses of the Quran realize that Satan plots and tricks to achieve his goals. Satan listed 7 methods of animosity. 4 were mentioned in verse 119 of Surah An-Nisa. He said, "I will mislead them and I will create in them false desires. I will order them to slit the ears of cattle and to deface the fair nature created by Allah. Whomever, forsaking Allah, takes Satan for a friend, has of a surety suffered a loss that is manifest." 3 other methods were mentioned in verses 16 and 17 of Surah Al-A'raf. He said, "Now, because you have sent me astray, verily I will lurk in ambush for them on your right path. Then I shall come upon them from before them and from behind them, and from their right hands and then from their left hands, and you will not find most of them thankful." So this enemy that made his enmity known promises to lead the son of Adam astray, using his tricks of evil and shameful acts, and saying things about Allah without knowledge. And if that doesn't work, then he puts false hopes into the hearts of people. Some might think that there is nothing wrong with that, but following false hopes results in 2 things: attachment to this life and hoping for a long lifespan. Both of these lead to other sins like confusing halal with haram and haram with halal, and changing Allah's creation with tattoos and other means, and men imitating women, and women imitating men. Satan sits on the right path to distract people so they will sin. So he attacks humans from all directions, with all forms. So he reminds people about the pleasures of this life while making them forget about the hereafter and its eternal pleasures. And he attacks them from their right side to distract them from good deeds, and from their left to make them commit more sins. So the devil adhered to these methods and made his animosity known, and Allah altered us to his intent to seduce us and obligated us to learn and know about this enemy, so we can avoid falling in his traps and to learn how to shield ourselves from his evil. To shield ourselves from his evil. The reason that the previous generations were saved from his evil was because they took him as an enemy and armed themselves with knowledge. It was narrated on the authority of Hatim al-Asam that he said, I noticed that everybody has an enemy. So I thought to myself, who is my enemy? The person who spoke ill about me is not my enemy. And the person who stole from me is not my enemy. My true enemy is the one that tells me to disobey Allah when I'm obeying Allah. So I realized that my enemy is Satan and his helpers. So I took them as enemies, and I declared war against them, and I prepared my bow and arrow so they will not come near me. Dear brothers and sisters, it is from the mercy of Allah that He pointed out this enemy to us and told us the methods he uses to lead us astray. It is also the mercy of Allah that He appointed angels that encourage us to do good and to distinguish between good and evil thoughts. The Prophet ﷺ described that in a hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said, indeed, Satan has an effect on the son of Adam. And the angel also has an effect. As for Satan, it is by threatening evil repercussions and rejecting the truth. As for the effect of the angel, it is by his promise of good end and believing in the truth. Whoever finds that, let him know that it is from Allah, and let him praise Allah for it. Whoever finds the other, then let him seek refuge with Allah from Satan, the outcast. Then the Prophet ﷺ recited, Satan frightens you with poverty and bids you to commit indecency. And Allah promises you forgiveness from him and bounties. So Satan always frightens people with poverty to prevent them from spending money for good deeds. So he reminds people of their own needs, especially at older age or if they have many children. And then he encourages committing sins, so he's always trying to push evil on people and to push the sickness of sins and the sickness of holding on to material and worldly things. So we need, brothers and sisters, to make the advice of the Prophet ﷺ as a scale for our actions and to look into our own thoughts. So if our thoughts are filled with good, then thank Allah for supporting us with an angel. And if the thoughts are evil and about sins, then we need to be careful of our own enemy so we will not fall into his traps and become one of his supporters. Allah revealed in Surah An-Nisa, verse 119, whoever takes Satan for a patron instead of Allah incurs an obvious loss. Assalamu alaikum.